In this video, we talk about cadences, or musical punctuation marks. The word cadence derives from the Latin word cado, cadere, which means to fall. Cadences act as falling motion, providing musical punctuation for the ends of phrases and sections in the Common Practice era. In this style, cadences have different levels of strength or finality. Common cadences include authentic cadences, including perfect and imperfect, half cadences, including the Phrygian half cadence, deceptive cadences, and plagal cadences. We'll begin with authentic cadences, the strongest punctuation mark in this style. Authentic cadences involve a dominant chord resolving to a tonic chord at the end of a phrase or section. Perfect authentic cadences, or PACs, are the strongest, most final sounding cadence in the Common Practice era. They are also the most specific. They have to include all these things to count as a PAC. First, it has to have a root position 5 or 5/7 chord, resolving to a root position tonic chord. So 5 to 1, or 5/7 to 1, either in major or minor. The tonic chord must have scale degree 1 in the uppermost voice. That voice may either be approached by scale degree 7 or scale degree 2. Either way is fine. I've had some students tell me that their previous teachers said it has to be approached by the leading tone or it has to be approached by the supertonic. It doesn't matter. We see both of them. Different composers might prefer different ones, but this is absolutely fine. We just want to hear, or we want to hear scale degree 1 in that uppermost voice. So root position 5 to root position 1, and ending on scale degree 1 in the upper voice. Imperfect authentic cadences are essentially PACs with a part missing. So these are the next strongest. So they involve a 5 or 5/7 chord in any inversion, moving to a tonic chord in any inversion. Well, except for 6/4, but you know that 6/4 chords have to be treated with care anyway. Some analysts will also consider a 7 diminished chord moving to a tonic chord to be a candidate for an IAC. Others will sometimes refer to this as a leading tone cadence. I'm happy with you referring to it either way. So here's an example of an IAC. Here's a 5/6 chord moving to a 1 chord. Now in that case we have an inverted 5 chord moving to 1. We still end on scale degree 1 in the uppermost voice, but that we lose the first part of what makes a PAC. So it's slightly less stronger and is therefore an imperfect authentic cadence. Here's what the 7 diminished chord moving to 1 sounds like, and that would be the leading tone cadence, or just an IAC involving a 7 diminished chord. And we certainly encounter those as well. Half cadences are phrases that end on a 5 chord. In general, any phrase ending on a 5 will be deemed a half cadence. And most of the time, these half cadences are in root position and don't involve a 7th. However, there's one specific kind of half cadence that we should mention, and this occurs most of the time in the minor mode. If a half cadence is immediately preceded by a minor 4/6 chord, it is considered a Phrygian half cadence. Here we are in D minor. Here's a little progression. That's our Phrygian half cadence, approached with that 5 chord, approached by a minor 4/6. This is due to the motion of 4/6 to 5, resembling the Phrygian cadence used in the Renaissance and early Baroque era, which included the noticeable use of a descending half step in the bass voice, and arriving frequently an octave above it in the uppermost voice. So in the Phrygian mode, we often have this progression. In fact, some pieces would even just end that way, but as we move into the common practice era, that has a need to resolve. It creates tension. So frequently, if you encounter concerti grossi, for instance, in the Baroque era, many internal movements of concerti grossi will end on that cadence. And then it'll be resolved in the next movement with a big, glorious chord that lets us resolve that dissonance, that tension that was built up with that Phrygian half cadence. Deceptive cadences, I'll talk about the specific kind that we frequently refer to, and then general ideas about deceptive cadences. In what we're dealing with here is a 5 or 5/7 chord resolving to a chord other than the tonic. The most common type of deceptive cadence that we encounter is a 5 resolving to the submediant. So 5 going to 6, be it in major or minor. Here's D minor again, and here's a deceptive cadence. Here it is, let's go to B flat major, and we can hear that there. So there we move to a surprise chord. In this case, what we want is for both chords to be in root position. If one of them is not in root position, it starts to sound like there's a mistake. So for instance, if I went 1, 5, and then 6, 6, it starts to sound like an add 6 chord in jazz. So we kind of want to avoid that. So instead of putting that 6 in first inversion or any other inversion, what we tend to want to have is root position chords for this form of the deceptive cadence. However, in major, you might hear a secondary dominant of the submediant intervening between the two chords. That's absolutely fine. And that could be in first inversion, because what that does is it creates an ascending chromatic line. I won't talk about this too much right now, but it would sound like this. And that's absolutely fine. Again, emphasizing the bass voice, that would sound like this. Do, sol, si, la. So when most people refer to a deceptive cadence, it's that 5/6 motion that they're likely referring to. However, there are other common deceptive cadences and misresolutions. In general, here's the rules that they tend to follow. They tend to have these two elements. First, we want to have the bass voice move in stepwise motion. So it's going to move from the dominant either down or up a step. It could be either a major second or a minor second, doesn't matter, but it tends to move in stepwise motion. We also want to hear a clear statement of scale degree 1 as part of the deceptive chord resolution. This is what makes a deceptive cadence work. It's like a musical joke or a musical pun. Part of what we expect is there, but the other context turns it on its head a little bit. So all of those deceptive cadences that I was playing had a prominent scale degree 1 in them. For instance, in the uppermost voice, mi, re, do. So we had that clear arrival on scale degree 1 there. It's just the context underneath it pulled the rug out from under us. Here are some common possibilities that we could encounter. We'll stay in D for a second, but we'll go to D minor. So I've mentioned Mozart's Kyrie from the Requiem in some of these videos. And at the end of the Kyrie, he's got this incredible deceptive cadence that goes 1, 5 to 7 diminished 7 of 5. Now you'll notice that this follows all the rules, even though it's a shocking chord. So first of all, the bass voice moves by step for that deceptive resolution from sol to fi, or scale degree 5 to scale degree sharp 4. And that chord still has scale degree 1 in it. And then, so one more time, that sounds like this. And then it resolves. at the end of that Kyrie fugue. Sometimes we can have 5 going to 4-6. 5 to 4 is also termed a retrogression. We'll hop over to D major for a second. So 5 to 4, 1, 5, 4, 6 sounds like this. So that bass voice still is going up a step, and that's fine. Also, we could have 5 going to any of the augmented 6 chords. That happens sometimes too. And if you're not sure what augmented 6 chords are, just wait for some of the future videos. So these are a few of the cadences that we encounter that help to delineate phrases. Now, there's one other kind of cadence that helps to close down some of the motion that happens in a piece, and that's the plagal cadence. In the common practice era, plagal motion refers to the movement of the predominant to the tonic without an intervening dominant harmony. When most people refer to a plagal cadence, they mean a progression from the subdominant to the tonic. Let's go back to a good old C major for a second. So an F major chord going to a C major chord. Or if we're in minor, that's a minor 4 chord going to a minor 1 chord. This is sometimes referred to the Amen cadence, as Protestant Christian traditions would often sing the word Amen to this harmonic progression at the ends of hymns. Plagal cadences serve a slightly different purpose than other cadences. It's rare to encounter them frequently at the end of phrases. Usually what they do is they follow another cadence, and they close down the end of an entire section or an entire piece. You'll notice that both the subdominant and tonic chords contain scale degree 1. So let's go back to C major. The F major chord and the C major chord both contain Do. They both contain scale degree 1. All the other cadences that we've encountered involved some tension that resolved to scale degree 1. This cadence does not have that kind of tension. Because of this, the plagal cadence serves to prolong the tonic. It means it serves to stretch out that tonic feel. It creates the sense of a cadential extension or a coda. Thus, it will typically occur at the very end of a piece or a section. So if you want to include it at the end of a progression that you might be writing or composing, that's fine. But what I would do first is have some sort of authentic cadence that happens, and then a plagal cadence follows it. Now, here's a secret. Other harmonies can be used to form a plagal cadence as well, though these are not the harmonies that most people refer to when they're talking about a plagal cadence. Remember that plagal motion is predominant motion to tonic motion. So the 2-7 or 2 half diminished 7 works as a great substitute for that 4 chord. So we could have 2 going to 1. Or what Chopin loves to do, the 2 half diminished 7 going to 1. Isn't that great? Rarely you can also have the Neapolitan 6 going to the tonic, because the Neapolitan is acting as a predominant chord as well. It's a little spicier, but you can still have it. But again, remember that most of the time people are referring to a plagal cadence as 4 going to 1. So those are the types of cadences that we encounter, our authentic cadences, our half cadences, our deceptive cadences, and our plagal cadences.